Alright, I've come down here in the Gumbies because we had a fair bit of rain, a lot of rain, the last week or so, or last couple of days actually. It really came down and a lot of it ended up in here. No surprise, still got the pump there, turn him on. Ooh. You know what, I forgot to turn it on up the top as well. Silly me. Let's go up and turn that on. A bit of wood falling in. Alright, try again. That's better. It's making noise. So while I got my Gumbies on, reminded me of Tunnel Trek, who's having a bit of a bad spell at the moment, to say the least. Hope he's going alright, and I don't know if you can say things are getting better, but it's a hard thing to say, isn't it? Things will get better, but it doesn't feel like it, does it? I won't try and pretend I know what you're going through. I can imagine it's not very good. Hopefully you get some level of enjoyment out of watching idiots like me wade around in pools of water with my Gumbies. A bit of history to these Gumbies. I had a job once. I had a few jobs, but one of the jobs I had to get down in these big pits in the city. Most of them were in the city, and they often had about this much water in the bottom, and or sometimes they had a lot of water in. You had to pump them out first, but with this big flexi drive pump thing, it was really good. Had a motor that sat up the top. I'm pointing up the top. You can't see where I'm pointing, up the top, and had a big flexible drive system come down with a pump head, and then this big, I say big to me, it's probably about a 2-inch diameter, maybe a bit less, maybe 75mm diameter hose that went up. And back in the good old days, you could just pump it out of the pit into the street and run down the gutter into the drain and go where it's meant to go. Then they introduced all these different rules where you had to either test the water, which we did. They tested it for particulates and oils and things. There was a few, I think it was 3 tests I remember you had to do. And if you passed all those tests and you kept all the records, then you're allowed to pump it out in the street. Otherwise you had to get a suck truck to come and suck it out, and they took it down to, I believe they took it to a sewer plant somewhere and dumped it in the sewer to be treated. And then not long after that, they changed it to say, well, now we're not going to do the tests anymore. You guys are stupid, or whatever. It's too hard. It wasn't pretty hard. And they just got suck trucks out and spent a lot of money sucking out pits. Anyway, you'd get them down to this level where you could walk around, and then you had to get out it was a fibre optic joint. It's like a big dome thing. So big, it's probably about, I'll say 18 inches, 2 feet long, and about 10 inches diameter, big cylindrical thing. And you had to get that out, untie all the cables which are around the perimeter. Is that the word? They're around the hole. And then you take them out onto the street and put them into this a van, and you splice the fibres to do whatever you had to do with that. Most of the jobs I did, I was connecting new buildings into the fibre network. So once you got the joint out, it was a fairly simple job to open it up and find the fibres and splice them onto the building lead-in cable, and then put all the fibres away, seal up the joint, put it away again in the hole, and then the job's done. But anyway, That's why I got the Gumbies, because I used to do that job. And that's why it is. Now, technically speaking, you were supposed to get all the water out because if something happens when you're down there, you roll your ankle or bump your head or whatever. Meant to wear hard hats too, by the way. If you do something happens, you could have a medical emergency. You could have a like a heart attack or something, or a dizzy spell, fall over. And if there's water down there, you could land face down the water and drown. Whereas normally you'd just fall over, and depending on what happened, you probably weren't going to die. So you were supposed to get all the water out, and we generally got it down to like an inch or so. The problem was that all these pits were connected with conduits joining other pits together, and they had cables in them. Some just had comms cables, the old coax. Some were coax, some were multi-pair, and some were power cables, depending on which pit you're in. Anyway, they all went in conduits, and they essentially joined up all the pits in the city together. And the conduits were supposed to be sealed, but some of them, the seals either weren't put in or they weren't working. So the long story is, the short story is, the pits were all connected. So if the pit up the hill was filled with water and you pumped out the pit you're in, then the water would come out the conduits. And sometimes it would come out quite quick, and other times it would just dribble out. But in the end, it meant that you couldn't really ever pump the pit right out. There was always a little bit of water in there. And you had to have a harness on, a gas detector. We didn't carry Oxybox because it wasn't deemed to be, it wasn't a tunnel as such, and it wasn't at high risk of having contaminated air. So we just had to have the gas detector, which went off with low oxygen, high methane and that, but the hydrocarbons and hydrogen sulfide, rotten egg gas. So detected those three gases. So low oxygen, high hydrocarbon or high hydrogen sulfide. The thing would go off, and then you'd have to get out. But we had a harness on as well, and an A-frame tripod thing set up above the hole. So the theory is, if something happens, they can winch you out. And you had to have the harness connected to the D connector at the back of your top of your harness behind your neck. I never had a problem. No one I worked with had a problem. So they were only there for, it was a precautionary type thing. So that was that job. I didn't mind that job, actually. The hardest part about that job was getting set up and dealing with parking, because a lot of these pits were on the road or some on the footpath. So pedestrian and traffic management was a pain, and sometimes you'd get to the hole and there was a car parked on top of it. So what I used to try and do when I could influence my work buddies was get there really early and get set up, and if it was an easy job, you'd be out before the crowd started to come into town. And then you pack up and go home. So it wasn't a bad job. Things move on. Then ironically I changed to climbing towers, which is one extreme, like going down in holes to going up towers. And that was similar in the sense you had to wear a harness and be hooked onto some sort of fall arrest system, whether it's a lad safe, which is a cable that goes up the tower. You can hook a little trolley thing onto it, and the trolley goes up. The idea is if you fall, it stops you from hitting the ground. And then when you get to the top, you put usually a thing called a shock absorbing lanyard onto the structure somewhere above where you're working. Not always as easy as it sounds, because if you're working on the top, there's not much above you, or nothing. But I never had a fall. No one I worked with ever had a fall, so again, it was a precautionary thing, and you wouldn't want to either. I think the lanyard was 1.5 meters. I think you'd fall about 1.5 meters, and then the shock absorber would take up and absorb the shock. And but of course you wouldn't just fall straight down. You'd be bouncing off the tower or pole or whatever you're climbing. So you'd get all banged up. And then of course the bit that takes your load are the two straps that go between your legs. So depending on exactly how those straps are positioned, you could do yourself a bit of a damage down there too. And then the big risk is you got your those straps are where you got some big arteries going down there. So if you're hanging in your harness, you can have some serious blood flow problems or damage even. But probably just some problems due to the weight that's on that area. So you've really only got a few minutes to get someone down if they do take a fall. So you've got to be trained and have a rescue kit available to go. Someone else, one of the crew on the ground's got to come up, climb up above you, lower themselves down. They hook your harness onto their harness, cut your system, and then lower themselves down, you and them, and get you down to the ground safely. So thankfully I never had to do that, only in training. And it's hard enough in training when you're working with a dummy. Although most of the guys I work with are dummies, but a real dummy, it was hard. And obviously stressful with a dummy. It'd be even more stressful with a human dummy. But nothing happened, so that was good. We're all pretty careful. There's only a few dickheads I worked with, and one in particular, I refused to work with him again after something that he did. And the other ones, you sort of naturally grouped towards people that you're confident working with. So that's generally what happened. The only time I'm aware of there was a problem is someone that I only knew a bit. For some reason, out of the blue, he was halfway up a tower, and he had what they respectfully call a freak out, and he just froze and couldn't climb up or down, and he just froze. And then someone from the emergency services actually came out and climbed up and managed to talk him down. So he climbed down himself, but that was the only thing that I've heard of happening up a tower. There were a few problems when a thing called a radio unit was dropped by someone. I wasn't on site at the time, thank God. Somehow that got dropped, and it obviously caused a bit of a stir because they weigh about 20 kilos, so you don't really want that falling off a tower. And rightfully so, there was a pretty serious investigation after that. And it turned out, I don't know how true it is, I wasn't involved, but no reason to doubt it, but the handle on this thing was made out of cast aluminium, and it broke. Now whether it broke off the lanyard because it fell and the shock of the fall as the lanyard caught it, broke the handle, I don't know. I suspect that's what happened, but it wasn't good. But yeah, anyway, everything you take up a tower should be attached with a lanyard, all your tools, everything. So if you do drop them, they shouldn't fall to the ground. And then there's another protection down the bottom. You've got it used to be called an exclusion zone. I think it's called something else now, but it's the same thing. It's just a zone that's taped off where nobody's allowed in that area while there's people working on the tower. And the only exception is people actually involved in some sort of a rescue if something happens. And people used to breach that sometimes, but if you're on the other side of the tower, it's probably no big deal, but definitely if you're directly below where people are working, you have to stay out. So there you go, a bit of a lesson confined space work of working in pits and working up on towers. And interestingly, when we were in the pits with the gas detector normally went off when you climbed out of the hole and the traffic had built up, and all the carbon monoxide was there from the cars. Then the gas detector would often go off, either high hydrocarbon, but usually it was that and or a low oxygen, because the things were set, I think they were set to 19 or 18% oxygen, and normally in fresh air it was around 20. So it makes a difference, all those cars driving around. Of course, as they burn petrol or diesel, it consumes oxygen, so that lowers the oxygen level and it outputs a whole lot of shit, but basically carbon monoxide, I suppose. So that was interesting. I don't do much of that these days. Well, I don't do any of it these days. They changed the rules, and really to do any work on a tower, you really have to be a qualified rigger these days, which I'm not. I was what they called a tech rigger, so a tech person who could climb. And the only real difference was that we couldn't haul anything up. If we were going to do an antenna swap or something, we had to attach the antenna to ourselves and pull it up as we climbed, which for the big antennas you wouldn't do, they were too heavy, but you could for some smaller ones, or re-terminating some cables, or changing a radio unit or something, you could do that. And also they changed it a lot to a lot more cherry pickers than climbing anyway, so that was good. It's hard work climbing towers. Like physically hard. You climb up a 30-metre tower and you're buggered at the top, or I am anyway. I was. And the fibre work, well, I don't know. I stopped doing that job when I moved to working on the towers. So, and what did I start talking about? My Gumbies. That's right. That's where my Gumbies came from. There's steel cap Gumbies too. Every time you do that sort of work, you've got to be wearing steel cap footwear, eye protection, hard hat. You've got to have safety glasses available. You don't always have to wear them, but you've got to have them available. And gloves. It's interesting. And I did do the training for going into tunnels with a thing called an oxybox, which is a little thing about as big as a binocular case, an old binocular case on the side of your belt. And very similar to a gas mask in another job I had. The difference is, I suppose, a gas mask just filters the air, whereas an oxybox actually generates, it's a chemical reaction. You open up, you pull this tab, and it joins these two chemicals together and creates oxygen. So it completely provides you with a completely separate source of oxygen, whereas the gas mask just filters out whatever it is that's happened. But the same sort of thing. You got to once the alarm goes off, or you get the signal, you've got to close your eyes, hold your breath, whack this thing on, check the seal, and then activate. In the oxybox, you've got to activate the oxygen supply, and then you can start breathing. And on the other one, you just check the seal and then start breathing. So that's that. Because I think on the oxybox one, you didn't have to close your eyes, because it was more of a less of a gas that's designed to poison you. It's more of a gas that you're going to get asphyxiated from. With the exception of, I suppose, hydrogen sulfide. I don't think when it gets in your eyes it won't kill you, it just makes your eyes water. It's more of a problem when you breathe it in. And you can smell it sometimes, but with hydrogen sulfide, or rotten egg gas, some people call it, it's only really poisonous when you can't smell it. It gets so strong that you can't smell it. Apparently it damages the smell receptors in your nose or something. So that's a bit of a problem. And you read about it, unfortunately, sometimes in milk fats or cheese fats. People go in them and they probably smell a bit of a whiff of hydrogen sulfide, but then that goes away and they keep on working away, and they get overcome with hydrogen sulfide and die. And to top it off, sometimes people go in trying to save them or see what's wrong because they think they've just had a bit of a dizzy spell or something, or maybe they're hungover, I don't know. And they go in to see what's wrong with their old mate Bazza or something, and then and they both die. There's been a few of those things happen over the years, unfortunately. And there's a screw down there. Oh, there's that. Found a screw. Some of it out. I was going to try and do some jackhammering tonight. Finished work for the day. I had to write up a document on some mistakes people have made. Classic old thing. What's wrong? And then probably tomorrow the rest of the circus will get together and work out what to do next about it. It's nothing serious, but it's got to be fixed. There we go. Where's that switch gone? There it is. Just because of the siphon, it still keeps on sucking a bit. Now with some therapeutic jackhammering and my voiceover, so sort of random jackhammering. I don't know what's going through my mind when I'm doing this. Just a bit here, a bit there, a bit off the screen. Generally try and find a sort of a face that I can jackhammer along, and then leave a bit out like that, and then work along it. It's just breaking up some of the bigger bits. The bigger bits are a bit of a pain to I'll dig out and then put where they've got to go. Trying to keep the sides square. I noticed that as I was digging down, the sides were sort of tapering in a bit. And one of these days I'm going to have to square them up. So I'll do a bit of this to try and help that, make that a bit easier when I come to doing it. I'll break up some big bits into some small bits. Easier to shovel. Bit more on the side, sort of random, sort of bit here, bit there. Now what's going to happen when they introduce this age verification thing? What's going to happen to YouTube? I don't know what YouTube or any of those big companies is going to implement for supposed age verification. It'd be interesting to see what happens. I'll probably jump through a few hoops to stay on. Depends what they ask for or what they want to do. But ultimately, if they ask to do too much, I suppose I'll just end up not participating in YouTube. These videos, I assume, will just stay there and for people to watch, but I won't be adding any more. That's the worst case scenario. We'll see what happens. Same with Facebook, and I don't know. I don't use the others very much. I don't have an X account,
I have an Instagram account, but I don't use it very much. I can live without that. I talk to a few people, so I should have a chat with a few people on Messenger. You can always go back to texting, or old-fashioned, give them a phone call. So we'll just see what happens. It's going to happen in, I think it's December 10. It's sometime in December anyway. I think they're going to introduce it. We'll find out sooner than later. So if any of my international fans wonder where I've gone, well, maybe that's it. Maybe the hoops were too big to jump through and I didn't do it. But back to the hole, you might be wondering why I'm not currently working on the roof, or the roof, as they say in Ontario. It's I still am, but the way that I've set the saw up, or where I set the saw up to saw the timber, is out in the open. And it's not too hard to set it up, but it's a bit of effort. So I tend to try and prefer to have a good few hours, if not several hours, of weather or daylight and good weather in my time available, so I can set the saw up, measure things, cut them, and then paint them. Obviously I don't need the saw to paint them, but I still need some good weather. So when I've only got an hour or so to do some work on the hole, I tend to just do jackhammering or mucking out or something like that. And I quite enjoy the jackhammering. And I also need the smaller, the fines, I'll call them. I'm stockpiling those for another job, which I've already talked about. So when I start that one, similar thing, I want to be able to start it and finish it fairly quickly. And part of that will mean I've got some of these fines available to help level the shed, and level the floor, and then I can put some shelves in and do a similar thing to the other shed, but hopefully a lot quicker. Because there's stuff in there at the moment that I'm going to have to get out and put somewhere, and that somewhere is probably going to be an inconvenience. Probably just stuff it in another shed or in my garage or something. So I want to reduce the amount of time I've got that inconvenience, which is another reason why I'm doing this digging. So it's all related. It will all come together in the end. I guess another reason why I'm digging is because ultimately the objective of this whole thing is to dig a hole down probably about another 4 or 5 feet from where I am now, and then dig at least a small tunnel across to the side. Tunnel or a room. It's probably just going to be a room. It's not going to go anywhere. That's the objective, so it does make me feel like I'm making progress, or I am making progress, when I'm jackhammering and mucking out the dirt or the rock. So that's another reason why in amongst working on the roof and the shed and other things like that that are all related, I still like to get down and do some digging. The light's not so good. It's sort of, I don't know what time it is. It's later in the afternoon. The sun's sort of down on the horizon a little bit, so not much of it's getting in here. I can see perfectly well with what I'm doing, but the camera doesn't pick up things that are where the light's not that great. I should get some lights, which I will one day. The one that I bought has that strobing effect. It's obviously pulse width modulated, and a little bit of mud slicked up on the screen. That's going to be annoying. That's pulse width modulated and obviously out of sync with the camera, so it strobes. I will look at the camera. I think you can change the frequency of the camera from 60 Hz, which is probably set up by default, to 50 Hz. I'll do that and I'll try again and see what it looks like. But otherwise I'll just go and buy another light and try that. That'll make it a bit better. More for videoing than working. But I'll probably also need a light when I put the roof over the top, because obviously that's going to stop a bit of the light getting in, even though it's a tinted polycarbonate. Sort of a browny grey polycarbonate. So it'll restrict the light a bit. So I'll need lights for that. Then obviously as I go down, the further down I go, the less light gets in. So. Bear you the pain of having the big blob on the screen, and I'll jump forward to the end, which is now.
Alright, I reckon that'll do it. Earmuffs off, glasses off, and I think I've had enough for this session. And a nice size rock down there, be good for my path if it doesn't break. All these rocks, you get them out into the air, and I suppose they dry out and they break up. So that's a good little jackhammering session. Now I've got to start the longer process of shoveling it up and getting it into buckets, pulling the buckets up. So that's good. Oh well, I'll do that. And if you're ever in any doubt what to do in life, just keep on digging. Just noticed there was a bit of clay on the lens, so that's, I don't know when that got there, but probably right at the start, no, my luck. So you had to look through a dot, put up with seeing a dot on the screen. Sort of metaphorically digging, whatever your digging is, keep on doing it. Doesn't necessarily have to be literally digging. Whatever you enjoy doing, whatever your goal is in life, whatever you do to reduce stress or anxiety or improve yourself, whatever it is, just keep on doing it. And if it's no good, if it sucks, then think about not doing it. It's not always an option. Some things you unfortunately can't not do, but a lot of things you can. You can make a conscious decision to stop doing it, and then maybe you have to follow a process to get there. But the first thing is to decide. That's enough philosophical crap from a person who enjoys digging holes. You may want to go and listen to someone else tell you how to live your life. Don't be like me.